Welcome back to another episode of Coach's Corner, brought to you by SymTrain, everyone's favorite AI coaching software. Maybe if not the favorite, definitely the most passionate AI coaches in the world. And today, on today's episode, we have a good friend of mine, CJ Nitkowski. CJ's had an illustrious career as a professional
Mhm.
baseball player, and he's converted into becoming an amazing broadcaster. Currently, color analyst for the Atlanta Braves and hosts on MLB Network a podcast of his own called Loud Outs. Is it a podcast, CJ? Loud Outs?
Nope, it's a radio show. You were close. No, so yeah, Sirius XM. I have a radio show 2 to 5 Eastern time on weekdays that I do with Ryan Spilborghs, former Colorado Rockies outfielder and now broadcaster for them on television. Also does Apple TV. So yeah, it's a radio show that we have on the all MLB channel, which is MLB Network Radio, Sirius XM channel 89.
Awesome. That's a great plug. And there's the drive-in podcast. I don't want to miss that, but people
Yeah.
can catch that on Twitter and YouTube, and it's CJ Nitkowski talking about his thoughts on baseball as he drives in to the Braves games. So you don't want to miss that or Loud Outs. So CJ, thanks for joining us. I wanted to, we're talking about coaching. I wanted to get started, just in your career and all the time you've spent as an athlete, professional athlete, and all the different things you've done, even coaching yourself. Is there any like most memorable moment or experience that you've had with a coach or getting coached that sticks with you today, CJ?
Sure, there's a lot of them. I was fortunate to play for a long time. And when I was done playing, I looked back at my 19-year career and counted 40 different managers that I
Nice.
had around the world. And so from there, every different personality that you could think of. And there's a ranking there, right, as far as the top and some
Yep.
of the worst. And for me, some of the best that I've ever had are names that you've heard of, like Bobby Cox was an absolutely amazing manager and coach. And then a guy you probably hadn't heard of, Trent Jewett, was one of my favorites that I ever had. And I had him in AAA in Indianapolis. So at least on the professional level, Trent is always a guy that sticks out to me. He was an unbelievable communicator. For my role, which was mostly in the bullpen, communication is huge, and staying in touch with your relievers and getting a feel for how your bullpen works. That specific role for your team is the most difficult to manage. Every manager in baseball will tell you that managing a bullpen is the most difficult thing to do because you don't know what you're going to get day to day, what it looks like physically for guys, what it looks like mentally for guys. You have got to be in touch with your group. And I play for managers that have really poor communication skills and some really big name managers that you probably heard of that were not great at running their bullpen. So Trent is always a guy that stuck out to me first and foremost because of the way that he communicated with the bullpen. To me, that was a really big one. So on the professional level, Trent is always a guy that I talk about. On the amateur level, a guy that you and I both had as a coach, and I heard Brian Gain talking about it as well when you had him on the podcast, is Bill Stiegel. Bill Stiegel was one of the best coaches I ever had. He would, I think, probably honestly tell you baseball necessarily wasn't his strength, but his ability to coach men is what probably left the biggest impact on me. I list him as number two of men I was most scared of after my father, but in a good way, right? He was a great
Uh,
disciplinarian, but he was a great coach because, again, I think he would tell you that, baseball necessarily wasn't his strength, but I feel like he did everything he possibly could to put me in the best position he could, to help me as much as he possibly could, to become a better pitcher. And he did that, including even giving us opportunities of where we played in the summer. This was a guy who was always looking out for his players and probably not even realizing that summer that I spent in Waldwick, New Jersey, playing in a men's league, thanks to him, ended up really turning my career around in a big way. So it's the guys that dive all the way in, the guys that are there for you, not for them. I think the coaches that know how to adjust to the personality. You cannot coach everybody the same. You have got to get to know your people and figure out what motivates them. There are some people that need to have their arm put around them. There's some people that need a kick in the ass. And trying to find that balance and communicate accordingly with the knowledge that you have for me is big. And it's a really difficult thing to do.
yeah, yeah, CJ. I wasn't on. I don't remember. Was I on that Waldwick team the
I
year
think
you
so.
played?
I
Okay.
did it a couple different years. I did it once in high school,
Yeah,
and then
no.
the year between my freshman and sophomore year of college, I played there.
Yeah.
But it got kicked off originally because Coach Teagle had got me there, and it's a long, boring story. But essentially, I learned a different pitch by having a conversation with a pitcher from Seton Hall University, and I went into my sophomore year with a completely different curveball, gained some velocity, and all of a sudden, I became a pro prospect after really not being one at that point.
That's awesome. One of my favorite things Bill Stiegel did is when we were facing Silvio Cinsali from Paramus Catholic. He got a couple cans of tennis balls, and he would stand about 10 feet from all the hitters and throw it as hard as he could and
Yeah.
make us try to react and hit the ball. So we
I
were
stood
ready
in
to.
there for that. I
Did
remember
you?
that too, sitting in that gym and standing in there. I wasn't a hitter. I became a pitcher only by the time I was a
Right.
sophomore, but I was still doing the drills and still doing everything. So I had gotten in there. I could still see this to this day. His facial expression. I was not comfortable in that spot. Right, he's whipping
No.
tennis balls from like 40 feet away, and I was flinching, and he was making fun of me because of it, like calling me out
Right.
for looking like I was scared. Even though at that point I was probably his best pitcher, he was not afraid to embarrass me a little bit in front of the team. And there's a good way of doing that. And I know it doesn't probably work as well in the office as much as it does in sports, but I'll tell you a quick one. Sparky Anderson, the Hall of Fame manager I had in my very first year in baseball, and things were not going well for me at all. I'd just gotten traded over there. I wasn't pitching very well, and he made a joke in front of the team about me and was kind of putting me down in front of this whole group of like really good players. Alan Trammell, the Hall of Famer, was on that team. Lou Whitaker, Kirk Gibson, like all these big names from Detroit from the late '80s into the '90s. And he walked by later, and I said, "Skip," I said, "Man," I said, "why do you make fun of me like that in front of the guys?" And he looked right at me and he said, "Let me tell you something, kid." He said, "It is better that I make fun of you than I don't talk to you at all." And this is a different style of managing that doesn't work anymore, probably. But at that time, it did. And there were young players in that clubhouse who we didn't talk to. And so it was his sign of affection was kind of that old school locker room. I'm going to tease you a little bit, but this is a sign that I actually care about you.
That's awesome. Hey, and so CJ, two major themes, right, that come out, right? Care about your players, right? And communicate with them effectively, but genuinely care and go out of your way. You mentioned Bill finding a team, diving in and being part of that, and then really being a great communicator to a player and communicate at their level. I love those two lessons for everyone. Would you say that that's the difference between being a good and great coach, especially when you bring up this skills development piece?
Mm.
And mental development, right? Because that's what Sparky was doing. He's mentally developing you to be ready to be part of a team. What other things, make a good and great coach, CJ?
Yeah. So again, it always will go back to for me that coach you very quickly pick up on wants to know more about you before he starts diving into what he does, right? And how he thinks he can change you. That coach is going to observe a little bit and get a feel for you and put the time in to get to know you to understand how you learn. Right, there's a process and there's a time there, and I know it's probably a little bit different in sports because we're so results orientated, and there's kind of one way to get there at the end, or at least one kind of goal at the end. But there are different ways to be able to get there. So I think with that part of it, you pick up on it right away. I went into so many new situations, right? Because even though I played as long as I did, I spent only 3 years in one spot. Right. So over the course of 19 years, 3 years was my max. I was changing teams all the time. My first full year in baseball, I played for four different levels, four different teams, right? So it's a whole new coaching staff. So you're going in and you're learning, and very quickly you're watching and you're picking up on what works and what doesn't. And so it is that ability right away. Who actually wants to learn about you before they say, "Hey, here's how I coach," and they just throw it on you?
Right.
Well, that might not work with me. Right, you got to be able to adjust. Even my college coach that I had at St. John's was very good at it, and it was something he said to me when I transferred there that really stuck out. He says, "I don't look at every guy the same way. I coach according to who you are, and then we go from there and figure out what do we have to work with both physically and both mentally." And to me, that's one of the biggest skills. And in this day and age when there's so much information out there and you see it on the internet, you get a lot of these coaches that will just, "Here's how I coach. This is how you do it." And they actually are missing that really important component of figuring out how you learn and what are your skill sets, both physically and mentally.
I love that. Our CX team, our customer experience team, I should say, CJ, spend a
Yeah.
lot of time
Save your business
working.
jargon. I'm not going to know it.
I know it. That's why I threw it out there. And so I opened up the acronym to the
Mm,
full word, right? So customer success, customer experience. They spend a lot of time with our customers, like not just building sims and creating these practice
mm,
exercises, but actually learning how they train today, and then how do I deploy SymTrain into that process? And and
mm,
and that's at the company level. And then you're saying, yeah, and those customers, if they're going to be great, they need to take it down to the agent level. And how does each of those agents learn and how do they improve, and coaching them with targeted
mm.
exercises to keep getting them better. That's awesome. Awesome advice, CJ. Hey, one of the things I definitely extremely impressed by with your career right? Obviously, being a professional athlete, it is what it is, right? You have to
Mm.
get to the highest level of competition and optimize your own performance to compete at that level. But then you did something, right? After your career was over, you reinvented yourself as a broadcaster. You were playing with, writing blogs and doing broadcast type of work during your playing days, but you really
Mm.
became and made yourself into an amazing color analyst and a radio show host, not just a podcaster, as we
There you
learned
go.
earlier today. But
Yeah.
is there anything like from a coaching philosophy or any common approach, CJ, that you think and you could take back from an athlete and then a broadcaster that helped you prepare, maybe practice, and really develop
Mm.
your confidence to again perform at such an optimal level like you did in both of these careers?
So it's interesting because I would also say there were things I learned not to do. Some of the greatest
Hmm.
advice I had got toward the end of my career was talking to a sports psychologist from the Pittsburgh Pirates, and we were just talking about reflection on your playing career and recognizing what you did well, but then also what you didn't do well, and really having a good grasp on that, and then making sure you're taking those lessons into what you're doing next. Right? For athletes, you're not going to do it forever, and most are actually not going to reach these high levels where they can just kind of relax after they're done playing and do whatever they want and sitting on a pile of cash. For the bulk of us, there's going to be a career afterwards, just like there's going to be for the majority of college athletes. Right? There's a lot that you could learn, what went well, but then I think also greater lessons come out of what went wrong. I learned a lot about myself in the middle of my career. I did one of these tests that I was, just completely skeptical about, that a guy asked me to do and kind of help him out on what he was testing. What they did was they gave you 300 words and they asked you to check off what you thought described you. And I'm like, this is dumb. There's no way, right? So I did it because I like the guy. He was a friend. I said, I'll do this for you. And I did it sincerely. And the results popped out, man. And I was floored. I mean, I felt like I got punched in the face because it was so accurate. I didn't know it though. I
Yeah.
didn't know it was accurate. So a couple of things I came away with that really helped me in what I do now. One of those things was being way less self-critical. I was unbelievably self-critical as a player and never gave myself credit for when things went right. My focus was always on kind of the bad side. And then there was also some components of maybe lacking some aggression and taking this attitude of, which because I had such early failure early in my career, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I was just trying to keep my head above water. I was just trying to stay there as opposed to actually setting really big goals. There's no way to go through life, but I didn't realize it. I'm just trying to hopefully stay in the big league, stay as a professional pitcher as long as I can. So now I spin it to what I've been doing here on the broadcast side, and I take a much bigger and more aggressive look at what I want to do and how I want to do it, and not just try to be there and not just try to be okay and hold a job down, but actually try to be great at the job. And it's an interesting industry because it's subjective, right? Where I was playing baseball, here are your numbers, they are what they are.
Yeah.
What I go do
Yeah.
now on a broadcast, people are going to watch the games no matter what, but they're going to share their opinions about you, good or bad, right? So there's not going to be an analytic that says, hey, you're really good at broadcasting, right? It's going to be more opinionated. It's going to be what your bosses
Right.
think ultimately who make those decisions on who they're going to put on air. So really understanding how the criticism flows and what matters, and the idea of not being self-critical. We all make mistakes. We do it. Like sometimes we don't know if our friends have podcasts or radio shows. We're going to make mistakes on air. It's going to happen. But we kind of roll forward with it. So I learned a lot from that part of it and understanding who I was as a player, mistakes I made, what I did well, and now spinning it forward. The common denominator between sports and what I do now, and I think for anybody, no matter what you do, are two really important things, and they're really simple. It is about passion, and it's about preparation. Those two things for me. If you have those two things as a broadcaster and you're good enough on air and you know how to articulate your thoughts, you'll crush it. You watch a lot of sports, people watch a lot of sports. You can tell sometimes when there's certain broadcasters that maybe have lost some of that passion or maybe you're not prepared. Those are two things that should never happen. And the passion obviously comes naturally. You got to love the game, you got to love the work. And the preparation is just about time management and caring and putting the time in. So, those two things for me, if I'd kept a higher passion on the playing side, I think I would have had a little bit of a better career instead of taking that attitude of keep your head above water. Always had the preparedness, but now taking that passion, making sure I'm prepared. Those are two huge keys for me in what I do now in broadcasting.
Awesome. And any little hints or secrets on preparation that you really like that are count that crossover in how you prepare certain things and that does help you build your confidence or not really?
No, yeah, no, I would say so. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because this is an entertainment and a storytelling business, right? So there's
Yep.
analytics involved in what we do. There's a lot of information out there that can help build me and point me in a direction in which I go. But now it becomes about, I would say this is the same thing for today's athlete, is there are analytics that are going to help you prepare, but how you actually
Yep.
use those once you get out there matter. right? You can't be there are guys that when I see it that get so locked up with the analytics or mechanics that they can't actually go out there and play. And there are broadcasters that get so locked up in the analytics and the numbers that are there that they can't be relatable. And the opposite is true. There are some that ignore where the game is today and the information
Yep.
that is out there. And then they sound like they're way behind. So we're all working on the balance of trying to figure out the best way to bring those into play. And it's similar for a player, just like it is for a broadcaster. There is so much data, there is so much information. You need to use it. How you best use it to bring it to your audience when your audience varies in what they want and what they don't want is the
Yep.
dance we're all dancing.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I was thinking you'd say repetition helped you in both areas, but and feedback. But what I love is the
So
concept of
feedback's a big
self.
one.
Yeah,
Real quick, that's
cool.
because that's hard to get in our industry. In this
Yep.
industry and what I do, it is really hard to get honest feedback. It's just one of those things that people, because they're concerned that they don't want to put anything in your head that's going to mess you up on air because you got to get in front of a microphone, get in front of a camera, that it can be very difficult to do. I think there's an opportunity in our industry, in broadcasting and all sports, to offer more critical feedback. And it's almost like, you'd almost rather a coach tell your son something than you tell your son something, right? It's the same thing.
Right.
Don't have my executive producer tell me. He or she could, but get one
Right.
from another region to get feedback.
Yep.
Fox did that for a little while and was really helpful, but they never really stuck with it.
That's cool. There's a cool book by Rob Fitzpatrick called The Mom Test, and when it relates to your broadcasting career, I'm definitely one of the culprits of the mom test, which is moms are either going to tell you, you're amazing because they love you, or they're going to be
Mm,
highly critical, but you never get real good feedback from a mom. And I'm always
yeah.
bragging on you as an amazing broadcaster. So I've definitely
Thank
fit in
you.
that area. So
Where's the
apologize for
feedback?
that.
I've been waiting on the feedback though.
Oh, I know, I
Like
know.
some
That's the
good.
point. I just, I
I don't
just
want just flowers, man. Tell me where I could be better.
That's that you got to go ask other people because I'm biased. I
Oh,
just tell you you're great
oh,
all the time.
thank you.
That's and mostly because I'm trying to win at pickleball, and I'm trying to make you not think about the game. I never do.
Nice.
I try to, but I never
Mm,
do for the audience out there. So I love the retrospective side of it and that self-awareness. I really love the concept, and I think you are pretty self-critical today, but probably a lot less than maybe you were in your playing days. But I like that concept of, hey, let's not be so self-critical and and
mm,
and let's drive with a high level of aggression. And you mentioned a BHAG, right? A big, hairy, audacious goal, right? Set these big
mm.
goals. So that's awesome stuff. You also started talking about the technology out there, and I'm curious, CJ, obviously SymTrain is an AI coaching tool. A lot of companies are leaning in on AI and AI
Mm.
technology to develop their employees and their staffs. And when I think about baseball, I do think that's a technology first type of sport. That's been around for a while, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
from video analysis and all the different technologies out there, is there one technology today that you like most in baseball that helps develop talent and helps develop skills or even helps win games, right? Either way. And
Yeah.
is AI starting to sneak in with developing talent?
I think we're going to start seeing a little bit more of the AI when it comes to it. There are more and more coaches that are getting hired. Staffs have gotten so big around baseball now. There used to be six
Yep.
coaches when I broke in. We travel with some of these staffs now, 15, 17, three different hitting coaches, two different pitching coaches. You have bigger training staffs, all of that kind of stuff. How much AI is trickling into the clubhouse? I think there are teams that are trying to figure out how to best use it. But when it comes to the technology that you use, the ability to measure what guys can do right now is incredible. The Hawkeye system, Rapsodo, the really high frame rate cameras. I'm really envious of this generation and how they can use the technology to get better. Again, there's a balance in there where you don't want to overdo it, and it helps my industry. There's a lot of publicly available data, which is great. There's also a couple of subscription services that FanDuel Sports Network subscribes to, which is hugely helpful. So there's not just one. I use multiple different places where I go to look for certain things and be able to describe them. And again, then I have to take that data. This is where I think the difference is, right? I have to take that data and figure out how to spin it to a story for that 75-year-old woman that is sitting in South Carolina listening to the game who does not want to hear me talk about induced vertical break on a fastball. But I can talk
Right.
about how that fastball has some giddy up and how it gets by guys at the top of the zone. Right. That's always a battle for me, and that's what I'm working on because I get excited about it because it makes my storytelling easier. But I've been told, and this has been feedback that I've gotten at times, is that people think I get a little number heavy. And instead of saying the number, Just go ahead and say like what I just said to you, like, hey, this guy's got a really good fastball. It's got some good ride to it, and leave it at that. My problem that I run into is that I always want to justify what I'm saying. And so then I'll give you the data point afterwards. And from an audience standpoint, some want to hear it. It's a smaller group and some don't. So that's where the challenge comes. So using data is huge, and it is always evolving in our game. And sometimes I think to a fault. Everyone's trying to stay ahead and find the next greatest thing, and some of the stuff isn't
Right.
useful. That's part of my job is to filter it. But the Hawkeye system, which is in every major league ballpark, there was just an announcement from MLB a couple of weeks ago. They're taking over all the data on the minor league side because what happened is there was organizations that had deeper resources that were putting in some better systems that other teams did not have in their minor league ballparks, and they felt like they were creating an unfair advantage. I don't know if I necessarily agree with MLB running the entire thing because now they're in control of the vendors, and you can't necessarily go out there and get everything you might want because I'm not sure MLB is going to go top dollar for every single team, but they've taken complete control of that data. And there's just a huge development component to what guys do now based on the data that they're getting back. The adjustments that they can make are so quick, right? There was a time, you can remember this, right? You guys throwing a curveball and he's asking for your feedback. Hey, Dan, stand in and tell me how this breaking ball looks. All right, I'm going to try
Yep.
this group. How does this one look? That has changed dramatically. Here's the number. This one's spinning at this RPM. You know right away which grip
Yep.
is better. It's amazing.
Yeah. Hey, Jack, did that fastball just hit you on the shoulder? No, it didn't. We literally saw it. That kid's shoulder was like three sizes bigger when he got home that day, and it was like it was black. But he didn't want to admit that it got hit because he figured we'd stop letting him catch for you if we
Yeah.
took him out. I think what was he, 12 years old or 13? That was hilarious. That was awesome. Hey,
You
so
make me feel
CJ,
bad.
yeah, no, don't feel bad. He loved it. So when we talk about data, right? You said 40 managers over 19 years. In those days, with six coaches, that's 240 coaches. And if your
Ballpark, yeah,
career
at
over
least. Yeah.
19 years, and now there's 15, so that could be all the way up to 600. So you were somewhere between 300 and 600 coaches. You feel as though, based on working with that many folks, is there any advice you have for business leaders on how talent is developed in sports and in athletics that they can glean from?
And I did that in probably at least four different languages, and trying to and going through interpreters with some of them. It will always
I
go
was going to
back
say, how
to
many are
just
you fluent in? How many are you fluent in?
none. I'm one, barely
English?
English, if
Oh
that.
man,
Yeah,
I learned
if
I don't
that.
know English. I've been working on a
No.
contract with a company in the UK, and I'm like,
Uh
guys,
huh.
I don't understand any of this language you're using. I don't know. English is definitely my second language.
I have some data points to back up my struggles with the English language as well. But for me, I think it's because of my personality, and what I think works. And that is first, I need to know that I can trust you. So get to know me a little bit. Like, listen, I deal with it. I'm not in the corporate world, but I deal with executives now
Yep.
throughout sports. And there are some leadership people who I'm drawn to right away. I had an executive producer when I was in Texas and calling games for the Rangers who instantly relatable, right? You break down any barrier
Yep.
right away from him being the top dog and him making the decision of whether or not I'm going to work there. There was a comfort level right away. And I've been around some others that are just really brash and just don't have the personality. And I guess they're not built that way, or they're afraid to let that curtain open a little bit and let's get to know each other and let's make it personal, right? That works best for me. Maybe it's not. Some people prefer that. It's like, let's just keep this black and white. And we're not friends, and perhaps that works for you. But I like to get to know people. I like to know that people actually care, that they're taking my employment responsibly, that actually means something to me and my family, and we're kind of in this together. And sure, hard decisions have to be made at times, but to me, that's the big one. I need to know right away to get a feel for you, and I think we all have those instincts on whether or not we can trust somebody. What kind of a work environment is this going to be? I feel very fortunate that all the different TV and radio booths that I've been in so far up to this career, that I've worked in incredible people. Who hasn't been somebody that I've gotten behind the mic with that I wish I wasn't working with, or couldn't wait to be done working with. That's just kind of luck
That's
of the draw.
awesome.
Sometimes you get
Yep.
stuck with bad partners. It happens. I see it around the league where guys just tolerate each other. I've actually felt like I've developed good relationships. But when it comes to those that are leading, it will always go back to relationships for me. Are you genuine? Do you actually care? Are you so locked in on only getting results, whether it's ratings, profit, whatever it may be, that you've kind of lost your way and you forgot about people? It's as simple as that for me. You can do both. I've had people tell me in baseball that there are general managers that they have to lie to you. They have to, and I don't buy that. I don't believe that for a second. Right? Something Brian
Right.
Gain was talking about on your podcast. Right? The idea of being honest with players and employees. It's all the same. I want to know that you're honest with me all the time, even if it's
Yep.
what I don't want to hear. I need to be able to believe in that. From there, I am now open to being coached by you because I can trust you. And that's, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean we're always going to agree with everything you say. Doesn't mean every coaching tip you have is going to be perfect. And I hope that you have the humility also to be able to admit that, right? And to know that. Let's try this. Let's see if it works. I think this is where we need to go with this. Or we're not getting the results we want. All right, you know what? Maybe I messed that one up. Let's try this method, whatever that may be. Humility, get to know me. Even though you're in charge, don't be afraid to admit mistakes. As soon as I get any of that feel from a person that's leading, I don't have a lot of confidence in that person.
Yeah, that's awesome. The way I describe you to people as the most humble and confident human being I've ever met, right? And it's a really hard mix to have both of those embedded in the same thing. But I love that get to know me. That's the second time you brought that up today. You also mentioned, hey, look, if you're going to be a great coach, communicate effectively, right? Care about the people who you're coaching and working with, right? And you talked about the retrospective and the feedback there and helping people not just have a level of self-awareness, but have the positive critiques on themselves while they're trying to
Mm-hmm.
improve and get better.
Yep.
And look, drive for a higher goal. So CJ, this is great advice. This is a great conversation.
Yeah. Real
As
quick.
I'm people, yeah,
Before you wrap, I just want to add this because as you think about things you hear along the way, right? And sometimes you don't realize. Like I take a lot of stuff in, and all of a sudden, 10 years later, you remember you hear something. But
yep.
it's a Hall of Fame pitcher, John Smoltz, had said something one time that always kind of resonates with me. And he said, "People are always going to remember how you make them feel." And that's true. Like I think in leadership, it's absolutely true. Sure, you might be able to get the most production out of me, and that part's going to be great. But at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, I'm going to remember how you made me feel.
Yeah, that's awesome. John Smoltz, he played baseball?
For a long time and did it well. Hall of Famer,
He was
one of the
good.
best.
Hall of Famer. Actually, Joe Buck,
Yeah.
I've heard Joe Buck mention that a few times
Mm.
with him. But that's awesome. Hey, CJ, so love that. How do you make me feel when I'm around you? And that's me wanting to be around you more. And I think, by the way, CJ, that's probably why you have found yourself in a situation where your colleagues are great to be around because you yourself are so great to be around. And even when you're making
Mm.
fun of people as often as you make fun of me, you do it in such a great way. Hey,
Sparky Anderson method.
I
I
know.
tease
I
you because
love
I
it,
love
man.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a matter of fact, I think somebody asked you like, "Hey, why do you make fun of him so much?" Because he can take it so well, right? So,
Yeah.
and I do love it. I do love it. It feels like I feel important. Let's put it that way. Hey,
You are
CJ, so if
important.
people are getting to know you a little better, is there a favorite book or favorite movie you'd like us to know about that's
Well,
in your
so I'm a simpleton
repertoire?
for sure. So when it comes to a movie, I'll never turn off The Godfather. I will watch it every single time. I absolutely love it. I was
Is
not
there
a
number one?
uh,
Is number one the best for
number
you?
absolutely. Oh yeah, and I won't watch three. I'll watch
Oh,
two. I
okay,
will not
cool.
watch three's terrible. Everybody knows that. That's kind of common knowledge. I was never a big
Sorry.
reader, man. I my dad used to try to get me to read a ton because I didn't know this till almost near the end of his life. But my father did not graduate high school until I was in second grade. He left. He got kicked out
Wow.
of high school, went to the Navy for 20 years, and got his GED when I was in second grade. Education was really important to him. It's why he made me go to Don Bosco. I didn't want to go, but it was really important to him because he knew he didn't have it and kind of where it put him in life. So he'd always be on me about reading. There was times I'd try to go out with my friends, and he would make me read an article out of the Wall Street Journal and then tell him about it. And I hated it. And I hated the summer reading that we had in school. It's never my thing, which
Did you
makes
ever
the
read
fact
All
that
I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten?
I did
Did you
not.
read that one? That was
No,
so easy.
no.
It was like this. I read it in like an hour.
I
That
don't,
was the easiest one.
I don't doubt that it was easy. But anyway, with all that being said, one of my favorite books that I've read here recently within the last couple of years is The Operator by Rob O'Neill, the guy who shot Bin Laden. I've heard him speak a couple of times as well at events. He is a dynamic speaker. It's an easy read, but it was one I couldn't put down, and I don't say that very often at all when it comes to reading. So I put that near the top of my list and one I've shared with people as well. But he's awesome. It's an incredible story. Obviously, a really big part of our history. But yeah, it's a good one. Get you pumped up too.
The Operator. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool, CJ. Good to know The Godfather and The Operator coming from CJ Nitkowski and catch him on his radio show,
Hey,
right? Loud
that's
outs.
good
Or catch him
adjusting.
at watching a ball game. Any Braves game, CJ will be calling color. Probably what, 140 of the 180? We'll miss you a few
Well,
times,
probably
right?
no. It'll be about 120. It's going to actually go up a little bit this year. So there's 162 games in a season because the Braves are generally a good team. They'll lose 18 of those to national, so that makes 144 local broadcasts, and I split them with other guys. But yeah, probably closer to 120.
120. Awesome. Well, good. We look forward to it. I always get a lot of great feedback from people on how you call those games. And thanks for joining us, CJ. Great advice too for business leaders on coaching and things that you've taken from the sports world. So as always, I love talking to you, man.
Thanks.